Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Welcome back to Building Your Wealth. My name is Solani.
And this is IB.
This is a highly requested video. We are talking about all the tools and resources that we would recommend for people who are kind of just getting into investing. I just want to learn more about investing and have more resources available to you that you can either listen to, whether it's podcasts, books, and even some tools. So I'm really excited.
Yep. To add a little bit to that introduction, I think some of the things that are going to be listed here are bits and pieces of information that I wish I had a little bit earlier that would have helped to facilitate some of the decisions I made or helped me make better decisions, either before you buy your first investment property or shortly after your purchase of your first investment property.
Gotcha, that's a good point. So, before we get into the video, a little housekeeping. If you're not subscribed to this channel,
Correct.
We post videos every week, and we would love for y'all to join our Building Your Wealth family. So make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We also have a private group for people who are interested in whether you're currently trying to invest or you are thinking about investing and you just kind of want like your hand held just a little bit. We have a private group on YouTube that you can join. I'll put all of the information down in the description box for y'all to check out. So, all right, so what's the word of the day today?
So, word or phrase of the day is certificate of deposit or CD. And you might have heard this before, but it's literally just a savings tool that is offered by a bank or a credit union that gives you a fixed rate of return, which is typically higher than what you will get in just a regular savings account for a fixed maturity date. Now, what does all that mean? It means that you put the deposit in this CD or you purchase the CD, and you will get your funds back after a certain period of time with a certain interest associated with it. So it could be like 3 years for 3%. Now you can't get, well, now you could, but in the past, you probably couldn't get 3% from your regular savings account. And at this rate, let's say it might be 3 years for 6%. And so they're asking you to put whatever amount, they will typically give a minimum amount at the bank and ask that you not touch it or you not take it out for the next 3 years, and they'll pay you that money. Why do banks do this, and why is this important? Now, we talked a little bit in the past about like the banking crisis and how people were just quickly moving their funds out of banks, and banks' capital ratios were going down quickly. This creates a floor underneath that where the bank knows that these certificates of deposit, the funds that are in there, are not going to be moving for this period of time, and so it gives them the opportunity to lend to other businesses and other initiatives to where they know that their capital is safe for that period of time. So just a short brief description there. Any questions about CDs, obviously you can ask in the comments. I'm happy to respond, or if there are any other details, we'll be happy to address that at a future video.
All right, awesome. So that's certificate of deposit.
Yes.
Okay, let's get into some tools. What are 3 tools that you recommend or that you feel like as people who are getting into investing, getting into real estate, should know about?
Cool. So the tools we're about to talk about right now are more for people who are getting into real estate or just very new into it. Okay. And the first one is to find your local multiple listing service. For the Houston area, it is HAR. Yes. If you literally just type into Google your city name, MLS, you will get probably like the first.
What does MLS stand for?
Multiple listing service.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
And so what that does is it gives you insight into all the listings and the statuses of the different real estate properties in your general vicinity. The reason why I don't always recommend Zillow or Redfin or some of those other places, which are fed from your MLS, is that some of the data there might be old. You might see a listing in Zillow that says it's like available, but it might actually be sold or under contract, and it might just take some time to reflect it in Zillow. So you might get your hopes up and call up the seller. Go ahead.
So I have a question. So you don't have to be a realtor or a broker to have access to these MLSs?
There's 2 views. There's the realtor and broker view, and then there's the consumer view.
Okay.
And so
they don't have to pay for it? Because I know as realtors you have to pay for it.
Yes. Okay. No, for the consumer view, you just create your own account.
And you see the same thing?
You see a version of the same thing. Now, obviously, real estate agents and brokers can get a little bit more detail with their paid version, but to know whether a property is available for sale, what the listing price is, and get accurate real-time information, yes, that's what you will be able to get from that account. Okay. For other Zillow and all the rest that are not tied to MLSs, you still get the information eventually, but it's not as real time.
All right, another one. What's another tool?
All right, one I recommend is Rentometer. Now, let's say you are trying to, and the website is rentometer.com. The links to all these will be in the description. And you want to purchase a property. You could either ask an agent that you're familiar with to do a comparative market analysis on what the rents in the general area is for the type of house you want and all that good stuff. Or you could go on rentometer.com, just type in the address, type in the number of bedrooms, number of baths, and click enter, and it will do that for you. I think you get like 5 free tries, and then you have to pay for it. Okay. But this is really, really easy to do your own analysis.
By the way, disclaimer, none of this is sponsored at all.
Oh, yeah.
Although, if you're watching.
That's very true.
Feel free. All right, what's another one?
Now, let's assume you've purchased your first rental, and you're trying to either get your tenant to sign a lease, sign some contracts or whatever. I like to use HelloSign, right? And it's a company that's recently purchased by Dropbox. And what it does...
You would know that.
I would know that. And what it does is it provides you the opportunity to send documents for electronic signatures. You can create templates and different things so that you kind of create some efficiency in your business to get signatures without being in person.
Is that free?
No.
An account you have to pay?
So there's a free version. I think you get 3 documents a month. If you're maybe 1 or 2 properties, you will probably just use the free version, and it's really helpful for you to get e-signatures that way. The last tool I had in mind for real estate folks is the bigger pockets, just ventures in particular. I know a lot of you, if you're remotely interested in real estate, you might have heard the name Bigger Pockets. They have
just know the podcast.
They have a podcast, they have a website, they have financial tools, they have a whole bunch of. So it's they even have forums, they have hangouts, they have meetups. Okay. So it's a big thing, and I if you're interested, if there's a meetup in your area, obviously get plugged in. You can read people's questions on the website, biggerpockets.com, and you can get some really, really interesting insights into other people's experiences through there. I definitely use them a lot, and so if that's something you're interested in and you're looking for a community, that is one avenue to get one as well.
All right, so let's get into some books.
Books.
Book nerds out there.
So actually, let's step away from real estate for a little bit.
Okay.
And, one thing that I've realized that is helpful is, apart from just, everybody says real estate is very hyper-local and is, the real estate market in one area might be very different from another. Yeah. But it's also affected by macroeconomics. And we talk about macroeconomics are the major economic factors that affect the business cycle in general. And so there's some books that I have read that has really helped me to wrap my head around macroeconomic effects, how to detect different trends, how the monetary system works, how different financial institutions influence the macroeconomic cycle. And so I'm kind of going to go through some of those, because if you understand that, it can help you to understand what part of the cycle we're in, and might help you to know when is a good time to buy, when it's not a good time to buy, and just help you overall knowledge there. There are a few books that talk about central banking, and this is kind of more US focused. Yeah. But the Fed, which is the central bank of the United States Federal Reserve, and 2 of them are The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is written by G. Edward Griffin. He's a older guy, I think in his 90s, looks really good for somebody in his 90s, and very sharp. And it talks about how the Fed was formed, under what circumstances it was formed under, and how they affect the economy we live in. And it's really, really insightful to get the backstory about that. So that's one. The other one about the Fed, it's called Fed Up. by Danielle. I know, right? Danielle DiMartino Booth. She's a really high energy individual who used to work at the Dallas Fed, actually.
Okay.
And she gives her own personal story from somebody who worked as an insider within the Fed and how, it's kind of shaped her thinking and information that would be really helpful to understand how the Fed works. So those two are really, really important. And I've learned a lot from reading those two books. And I think it will be helpful for you to just get that understanding as well. Some other ones that I think lean more to like the digital economy, like cryptocurrency, and how that might shape the future. This is more like future looking. The Sovereign Individual, which is a very, very interesting, book around how the future of government will work when people are able to hold on to their money and the government cannot just tax you without your approval. In the past, farmers used to do their own subsistence farming and all that. Yeah. And for protection that the government provided to prevent invaders from coming into the city and, invading and stealing their crops, they would pay a tax to the government. And so the tax man or tax collector would come to your house and look at your plantation and determine how much wheat or whatever you planted you would give to them to go back to the crown. And sometimes it would be a negotiation where you and that individual will talk back and forth and be like, oh, if you do this, it's going to affect me this way. Yeah. And then we'll come to a compromise that will work for everybody. Now, as government became bigger, it started to use more violence. And so, where it was just like, give me this or else. And now we don't even get to say which is kind of the same form of violence, but if you don't pay, you can't negotiate your taxes. Yeah. If you don't pay, you're going to jail. So it's the same form. But if we get into a situation where people are, and the reason why people couldn't move or get away if they didn't like the taxes, because I can't move my farm, I can't move my house, and a lot of those things that keep people tied to a certain location. But as we go into more of this digital economy where people are not just geographically tied so much, you can literally move around, and that would change the way government potentially could look around taxes. So anyway, I'm going too deep. That's really, the book is really, really interesting, and I think it just helped to shape the narrative as we kind of go into the future and kind of realize some of these things. Yeah. The next one is called The Fourth Turning. Okay. And
that already sounds very conspiratorial. The Fourth Turning.
So it goes through the different stages of society. Have you ever heard the term hard times create strong men, strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times?
With dark. Weak men. Okay. Well, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. So weak men create what?
So strong men, hard times create strong men.
Yes.
Strong men create good times.
Yes.
Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times.
Ah.
And so you just go through the cycle all over again.
Dang, that's deep. Okay.
So what it goes through is I forget the exact details. There are 4 turnings that go through, and where you have political cycle, technological cycle, and how it changed society. Yeah. And you get massive change in society when we go through really tough, difficult times. And the generations that went through those tough, difficult times have kids, and those kids have certain traits and certain similarities. And it goes through the different generations, Gen X's, Boomers, Millennials, and all that, and how it's the similarity between skip a generation because they experience, or 2 generations because they experience similar things. And so it just helps to shape the full picture view of where society is right now, and based on it you can kind of get an idea of where society is, and it kind of has a prediction of where it will be after this turning. And so the idea is that we're technically now in 4th turning, and we're about to go through a...
So we're at what point?
You read the book. You read the book to find out
where times creating strong men period, or the good times creating weak men period.
I think we've had the good times creating weak men.
So now we got weak men, weak people, and we've created hard times.
we might be in the process of creating hard.
I think we've created. I think we're in the hard times.
So that is
now we're creating strong people, possibly.
So, anyways, that's kind of where.
Interesting, yeah.
The last two, number one is Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. And the whole general thesis around this book is how over time there have been empires that rise up and became, world hegemonies, and then they crash. It went through like the Dutch, it went through the British, and now it's America. And his idea is that a lot of evidence is pointing that China would be the next world power. And so it's just kind of talking through the dynamics and how it literally just plays in cycles and cycles. And there's so many similarities between the time we have now and then the time that as the U.S. was taken over from the British and as the British were taken over from the Dutch and so on and so on. So it was 500 years of history. And
that name, Ray Dalio, sounds very familiar.
Yeah, he's a really massive, he's kind of retired now, but he was the largest hedge fund manager at the time, run Bridgewater Associate. That was his hedge fund. The last one, just to balance things, it's called The End of the World is Just the Beginning. And it's actually the opposite argument to Ray Dalio's book as to why China is not going to take over from the U.S. and the U.S. is just going to remain the world hegemony going into perpetuity until something changes. And so it just so it doesn't sound like I'm biased, create a balanced view.
Yeah, so you get two perspectives.
Two perspectives.
Yeah.
And the last book, End of the World Just Beginning, is written by Peter Zeihan. I don't agree with everything he says, but I just want to offer that for people to read.
All right, so the next thing, and we are kind of running in on time. Let's just maybe this one just like talk about it briefly. I know actually we're going to talk about some real estate books too, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just like list them, the real estate books, and then we can get into the podcast.
So as far as books that I feel would be really, really interesting for people who are trying to get into or just new, number one, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller is actually the guy who founded Keller Williams. Dave Jenks and Jay Papason. Finding and Funding Great Deals by Anson Young. That's really interesting, but I remember that was very pivotal in the beginning of our real estate investing career. And the last one by Ken McElroy is the ABCs of Real Estate Investing. So those three would help set the base fundamentals and the mental framework around real estate investing. I really recommend those. Really helped us in the beginning.
All right, so those are all the books for real estate, or do you still have some more?
Those are all the books for real estate.
All right, so let's quickly jump into podcasts. So what are some podcasts that you maybe currently listen to, or maybe listen to? Because I'll tell y'all straight up, I don't listen to those investment or real estate podcasts. That's where I just like pump brakes. I like my the Friend Zone, the Read. That's more my bag. Anyway, so what are some of your favorite?
The ones to listen to right now, I really like the Investors Podcast. It was founded by Preston Pish and Steve Roderson. They're stepping away back from it, and so it's run by, they have like an Investors Podcast network. I'm not getting paid for any of this, so if y'all want to sponsor me, just shout you guys out, please do. Yeah, they have like millennial investing, real estate investing, the general market, Bitcoin. It's like a network of different podcasts within the podcast. The next one, very similar setup, is the Blockworks Macro Podcast. It has like a list of podcasts underneath it that really help. If you're just into crypto, you can look there. If you're into like macroeconomics, you can list there. So for example, there's the macroeconomic one. It's called Forward Guidance. One of my favorites, is really good. The other one, focusing more on like crypto, is like, on the margin. They have Macro Compass, which is actually winding down now. And then one thing that I thought was really helpful, it's another podcast I listened to. And I'm glad you brought this up because it's really short form. I think the podcast length is about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And it breaks down financial terms and like theories in a very easily digestible way. The creator's name is James Lavish. He's like a, really, really intelligent guy, and he talks about different things. And if you're new, just trying to understand like finance, investing and just macroeconomics and things like that, that's a really easy one. 10 minutes. And so it's called The Informationist. So that's really one that I've been listening to, and it's really, really good. And it has it breaks everything down into simple terms. And then I like the podcast because it just talks about like everything. I don't know, the topics on the podcast are just like so wide. I can't tell you what it...
There's some podcasts that are very triggering.
Yeah.
Another one that I want to mention is Earn Your Leisure. I know you don't necessarily listen to that, but sometimes I listen to it on Apple Podcasts, and I follow them on Instagram as well. Maybe that's another thing we can do another time, like maybe some pages. It's just like people that are in this space that are worth following as well.
Yeah.
I'll try, if I have time, I'll try and list some down below, but Earn Your Leisure is definitely one, and they're pretty popular, so I would at least follow them on Instagram so you can kind of catch like the little clips of the podcast if you don't want to watch the full podcast. So, okay, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. We are at over 20 minutes, so yeah. Hope y'all learned something. I'm gonna put all the notes down below so that y'all can just directly click on it. And thanks again as always for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.
Yes, smash it.
All right, bye guys. See ya.